Auburn's newly revealed 2025 schedule puts even more pressure on Hugh Freeze.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend. And Darrell, we're going to talk about the latest drama, I guess, with the Phoenix Jackson saga. Did he commit? Did he not? What's up with that? As well as just overall portal chatter. There's a handful of very talented players that visited Auburn yesterday, but we learned Auburn's 2025 schedule last night. And Darrell, I think it shapes up very nicely. I think it's very favorable for the Auburn Tigers. And because of that, I think it puts even more pressure on Hugh Freeze to get it right and get it right quickly in 2025.
Yeah, I think if it was like a schedule that was a gauntlet, I mean, if it was something that was really overwhelming, there's some grace that could be given there. But let's be honest, it doesn't matter. Whatever the schedule came out to be, there was an inherent pressure with Hugh Freeze in 2025 because of what happened last year. But yeah. I think you make a great point with how this schedule sets up, that there should be a lot more success in this schedule. And I think everybody knows it's just opponents being flipped, but where you play them matters, these opponents. And I think really Auburn caught some breaks, and it really sets up nicely for them.
Yeah, I think so too. And some of this might depend on your opinion of Baylor next year, as well as your opinion of Arkansas and Missouri. I think everybody else is going to have similar opinions on a lot of these teams. But last year, we were kind of able to break it up in three parts. And I think you can kind of do it the same way here. And it's what you do before the bye week. You go to Baylor, you host Ball State, you host South Alabama. Auburn should be 3-0 in that situation. Once again, like some people may be higher on Baylor than I am. Then you go to Oklahoma and to Texas A&M. That, in my opinion, that's the toughest back-to-back stretch of the season. You go to Oklahoma and to Texas, and then you get a bye week after that. So to me, that's the first chunk of the schedule. And if you can find a way to navigate that and only have a loss or somehow be undefeated, I think most Auburn fans would take that.
Yeah, Auburn really, you talk about inherent pressure. Last year with having 5 home games, if you were 3-2 coming out of that stretch, failure. Auburn wasn't even that. If you're 3-2 coming, I would hate to lose to Oklahoma and Texas A&M back to back. But if you go into that next stretch 3-2, you're not in that bad of a spot. Now you might be for a playoff berth, but to get to 8 wins or to really kind of show some marked improvement, you're not.
Yeah, right.
And that's the thing. We all knew that anything less than 5-0 or 4-1 after that stretch last year was going to be considered a failure. And that's what it was.
And they just kept tripping over themselves. Yep. And it's just like, gosh, like, how do you get out of this hole?
I think Auburn can find a way. And of course, there's so many variables and there's so many what ifs. And to speculate now is so early because we don't even know what the roster is going to look like from a
don't even know who a quarterback is.
Don't even know who the quarterback is. But let's say Auburn kills it in the portal. Let's say just all the national pundits and everybody says, man, Auburn has absolutely killed it to go in line with those 2 recruiting classes. Well, then I don't see a scenario why you shouldn't split between Oklahoma and Texas A&M. I really don't.
All right.
And if you do that, then you're really looking good. Again, that's pie in the sky with the way this year went. My goodness. It is
pie in the sky. I think you're more optimistic than I am right now.
Yeah.
But, you can see the path to it. It's just, I think a lot's got to happen. So then you get your open date. You're off a week before you host Georgia. And I think that's an underrated part of this. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people react to that aspect of it. But you go back-to-back weeks at home with Georgia and Missouri, and I love that. And then you go to Arkansas. I think that's a stretch there that's probably going to define the season. If you can go 2-1 in that stretch, I honestly feel like you can do it. But once again, like there's just so many variables here.
I agree. Sooner or later, Georgia's going to get got by Auburn. It's just, you look at how long this streak has gone. Auburn almost beat them, 2 years ago with Bowers having a monster game. again, depending on the roster reconstruction, if
Mhm.
Auburn does what they're supposed to do, that game's not. I'm not using that as a throwaway game. And then the Missouri game. I mean, Missouri was a top 10 team, and Auburn goes to Missouri and should have won that game at Missouri. So
Yep.
that game I think is very, very winnable. And then, as you mentioned, you come out of that stretch, and who was after Missouri? You go to.
So you got Georgia, Missouri at home, then you go to Arkansas.
Yeah, to Arkansas, which, we counted Arkansas as a W this year. And it's just weird. It flips. I mean, Auburn's played well typically in Fayetteville, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And obviously, I think if Auburn could have played Arkansas again, I think they would have won, but that's not how it works, obviously. And also, it seems like all of Arkansas's team is going to Ole Miss, which is funny. It's kind of funny. After that, and just for what it's worth, while Auburn has a bye week before Georgia hosts Kentucky the week before they travel to Jordan-Hare Stadium. So maybe something there. After Auburn heads to Arkansas, they host Kentucky and then go to Vandy, open date, Mercer, Iron Bowl at home. And so to me, you've got a prime opportunity if you can figure things out and find an identity on offense, and the defense picks up where they left off a year ago. Between going to Arkansas, Kentucky, at Vandy, Mercer, Auburn should be riding a 4-game winning streak going into the Iron Bowl.
That would be huge. Yeah.
I mean, if they can get through Missouri, I really like where Auburn could be in the back half of the schedule. They've just got to survive it. And last year they didn't survive it. They did not survive the first half of the schedule. Can they next year? I think it's easier this year than it was last year. And in theory, should be better from a roster standpoint. So I think because of all of this, the pressure is on Hugh Freeze to get it going early and to be much more efficient and effective and explosive on the offensive side of the football.
An underrated piece of the last 3 games of the year, the last 3 weeks, the way it plays out. No disrespect intended for Mercer.
Sure.
Auburn should have 2 weeks to technically prepare for Alabama.
Yeah, sure.
To game plan between the bye week and the Mercer week. So there's no excuses. The game plan this year sucked. When Auburn came out and what they looked like game plan wise against Alabama on the road was nothing like anybody thought. It was not an effective game plan. It was not a good game plan. There is no excuse to have 2 weeks because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but think about the gauntlet of this year with having to play A&M before you played Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, your whole focus, your whole energy, everything you schemed and game plan was you had to get through Texas A&M first because you knew you had to win that game to have a shot to be bowl eligible. No excuse next year. Bye week, Mercer, Bama. You better be preparing and scheming for almost 3 weeks before you play that Iron Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, the chatter this offseason is going to be similar to it was a year ago. They're going to look at the schedule and say, wow, Auburn's got a shot. This is the easiest schedule I've seen in my lifetime. Like, this is one of the I can't think of an easier schedule that Auburn has ever had than this one.
The only thing I would say is that money game, that game that typically you don't open up with a Power 4 school on the road like they are Baylor, that's the difference. In years past, it was a home game against a directional school or a group of 5.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
So that's a little bit different. It's like the same year that Auburn went to Cal, made that a little bit tougher. And I don't know how Cal and Baylor, how comparable they are.
Yeah, Cal 2 seasons ago to against Baylor this year. Like,
I will say that Waco's more than likely a tougher place to play than Berkeley is. So that in itself is a little bit of a
sure. I'm not going to push back against that.
So that makes it a little bit more difficult.
And to me, there's some inherent pressure when you go to Baylor because, gosh, if they lose that game, like the meltdown is going to be insane. And I think it will be valid. I think it'll be a valid meltdown and response if Auburn loses at Baylor. It would be bad. I'm not going to say devastating, but it would be really, really bad.
Yeah, it could set the tone. Really, it really does set the tone for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. I think the layout of this schedule, once again, could potentially put more pressure on Hugh Freeze, but the pressure's already there. let's don't kid ourselves. The pressure is already there on this program and on this head coach going into the season, regardless. And how does he fix it? Well, you get guys via the portal, and there were some talented guys that were on campus yesterday, and it seems like things are trending in the right direction. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, Darrell, you can win that first $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets. 150 bonus smackaroonies. Hey, right now you can bet on Auburn to win the national championship plus 800 odds. What do you think about that?
Ooh,
what do you think about that?
That's nice. That's nice right there. I like that a lot.
I'm there with you. You can also bet on them plus 190 to win the SEC regular season, or even plus 160 to win the to win or to reach the Final Four, which I think is actually even more insane. That's so cool. Once again, visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. All of that at FanDuel.com. Hey, look, I can't imagine having an Auburn fan that you've got a Christmas shop for that's on your list, and not checking out Alumni Hall to make sure that gets done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and listen, learn this phrase, e-card.
Ooh.
E-card. It's a wonderful way to give a gift to somebody that may not have access to Alumni Hall in person at one of the 3 locations. You send it to their email. It's a gift card, and they can just shop online, barcode, and get whatever they want, and it drop ships to their house. It's beautiful.
There you go.
Beautiful.
All alumnihall.com. They've also got 3 great physical locations in Auburn, Opelika, and Huntsville. So be sure to check them out. alumnihall.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Man, gosh, where do we start? Eric Singleton Jr., I think, is where we start. I mean, he started his visit earlier than some of the other guys that we're about to discuss, including Maalik Murphy and then Darrell Robinson. Thank you. The UConn running back, and of course Maalik Murphy, the Duke quarterback. Everything that we've heard is how great it went with Singleton Jr., the outstanding star receiver from Georgia Tech, to the point, Darrell, where I would be a little surprised if Auburn didn't land him at this point.
Yeah, I figured out, by the way, when we did the show yesterday, Darvin Adams is who he's related to, that played with Cam Newton on the national championship Auburn team, another receiver. So that was that. I got that connection. So he also was recruited heavily by Hugh Freeze when he first got to Auburn. There's some Auburn familiarity there. I agree with you. I think right now, if you had to put in a crystal ball or say who's the favorite, Auburn would be the favorite. Didn't realize he was a slot guy. Thought he was an outside guy. Did a little research.
Well, he played more.
Today.
He played more outside than he did slot last year at Georgia Tech.
But I'm hearing that Auburn would want to use him in the slot position.
Which doesn't this feel? I mean, there's so many parallels to this situation and Robert Lewis a year ago.
Exactly.
Because Robert Lewis played more outside, played some slot, but played more outside of his previous stop. Georgia State, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, right?
Georgia State.
And Auburn recruited him to play slot at the next level. That made a little sense because you're taking that jump. Like, the ACC, it's not like it was, it's not like it's an awful conference. So Eric Singleton making that adjustment is a little interesting to me. But here's the ratio. So in the slot, he played 213 snaps. And then out wide, he played 426. It's almost twice as much.
Well,
exactly twice as much.
If you use Cam Coleman as an example outside, and if Perry Thompson plays outside or whoever else, I don't know where Malcolm Simmons is going to line up. He played a lot of slot last year, but here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I get that he played in the ACC, but I watched his game against the big boys, and he really had a good game against Georgia. I felt like he played well against Georgia in that game that Georgia Tech, almost won the multiple overtime game.
And for what it's worth, he played 30 snaps in the slot against Georgia and played 44 out wide. So the ratio is a little bit higher in that game of him playing in the slot. So you know that he can do it against an SEC defense like Georgia. So that's encouraging.
And he's very, I think from a pure speed standpoint, listen, I don't want to have revisionist history. I'll own it. I loved Robert Lewis. I loved that signing. I thought he was going to have a very, very good year for Auburn.
Yeah.
But Singleton is a different level of receiver. He just is. Robert Lewis did not come in with the accolades of being the best player in the portal or the best receiver in the portal like Singleton has been rated. And I think Singleton's faster than Lewis. I think he's got a lot more speed.
The prestige, the status of Singleton is much similar to KLS last year than Robert Lewis. The role is more like what Robert Lewis was recruited and brought in to do. But the expectation, the status, and the ranking and probably compensation is going to be closer to KLS than Robert Lewis. So
as it should
nice
be.
Combination of the two. Yeah, it should be. Sure.
As it should be.
Sure.
So, yeah, I would be very excited to get him to commit and sign with Auburn. I think that'd be a wonderful catch and first piece of the puzzle. And again, I want people to understand this because as I went back and rewatched some stuff like I always do in case there's something that I missed or want to touch on later on, you brought up a really good point. And I know we're doing today's show, but on yesterday's show, it transitioned. If you get Singleton to commit, it's got to speak volumes that Auburn and him know who their quarterback's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's more to this than just Singleton committing, and that makes it big. You don't commit to a school if there's a big question mark or an unknown factor of who the quarterback's going to be. I'm sorry, you don't. And so,
I don't care I don't care how much the NIL is. Like, you're not, unless you have an idea of who's throwing you the ball. 100%. I agree with you.
So whether it's privately or whatever, he commits and signs with Auburn. I would suspect that there would be an announcement shortly thereafter, or at least maybe somebody's playing in a bowl game or a college football playoff. I don't know. But I'm saying Auburn will have his quarterback lined up if someone like that commits.
Well, they're both here on the same day. So let's talk about Maalik Murphy, the Duke quarterback. I mean, is that intentional? Is that on purpose? It's hard to ignore it, right?
I think so. I think it's very hard to ignore it. I think that there was a lot of scuttlebutt yesterday on social media about Murphy and stuff I put out in a Twitter poll or an X poll. We talked about it on the show yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think people aren't understanding that, his rushing yards. And look, Steve Sarkisian liked this kid enough to give him a scholarship and to keep him from jumping a nice NIL package his freshman year. There wasn't a pathway to play with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. He goes to Duke and throws for 3,000 yards. And people say, well, he had a high interception. I get it. He also had 26 touchdowns, and he completed 68% of his passes. That's the statistical thing. Look at the eyeball test and watch it. People, I heard this. How is he any different than Peyton Thorne? If Peyton Thorne couldn't make those throws, well, watch his arm strength and on the deep ball. And you tell me if it looks similar, because it doesn't. Very strong arm. And again, Steve Sarkisian knows quarterbacks. He offered this kid and wanted him to stay, so they did everything they could, and he did. He got some games late as a freshman for Texas. Mm-hmm. I love him. I loved him yesterday.
Yeah.
I loved him before we even knew he was coming to campus. Remember, and there's proof of that in the video. So I think if you pair these two up and they're both on campus together and there's interactions and there's conversations, I think people should be excited if Maalik Murphy committed to Auburn and quit, just trying to find things wrong. The guy threw for 3,000 yards and 68% of his passes. I don't care that he didn't run for 250. I don't care about that. Okay.
I agree.
That's
with
what running backs are for.
Of it. Yeah. I don't. I know Auburn fans love a mobile quarterback, and there's this misconception, I think, of what an RPO actually is, and you need a mobile quarterback to run it. I mean, obviously you want your quarterback to be athletic, sure, but I don't care about the rushing yards. I can't, and to be honest, I don't really care about his deep ball either, if I'm being entirely honest. And I do think that's one of his better traits. But to me, what Peyton couldn't do consistently, was make quick decisions consistently. And I don't know if Maalik can do that. We'll see. And I'll jump more into tape, once he signs and if he ends up being Auburn's quarterback and all of that. But because it seems like the two names we're hearing the most are Maalik Murphy from Duke and then Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma. Those are the two names you're hearing the most. And I don't know if either one of them fix that problem day one. I don't think any of them's a shoo-in. I see the argument for both as far as potential, but I do think we're going to be asking questions all offseason about it.
I get the whole thing. You make a good point about, I don't care that but what I want my quarterback to run, whatever, what I want my quarterback to be able to do is throw for 3,000 yards and 68%. That's what I want a quarterback to do. And I get the indecisiveness, but sometimes, Zach, this arm strength makes up for that. Like if Peyton Thorne was off and hesitated and let the ball go, without velocity, it gets intercepted or gets batted down. You can overcome that if you have a freaking rifle. And I've watched some of his throws in windows. And again, I keep going back to Steve Sarkisian saw something in him that he offered this kid and loved this kid and hated to lose him, but understood the path was blocked. Is there a name or two that I could dream about that maybe I've heard that I would like more? Absolutely. But if that doesn't happen and Auburn doesn't get that tier one, oh my gosh, knocked you over, this came out of left field name that then you could do a lot work. Then, in my opinion, Maalik Murphy is an upgrade over Peyton Thorne, and people would see that next year if they would just allow themselves to.
I do agree with that. I do agree that he can be an upgrade over Peyton Thorne. No question. No question. So we'll see. I mean, we're going to talk about this all.
Yeah. Don't underestimate the deep ball too. When you got guys like Coleman, Thompson, and Simmons running those routes, and Singleton on deep balls.
Yeah, maybe Singleton.
Those are four guys that, I mean, if you can throw the deep ball, you got four guys that can say, "Oh my gosh, I got somebody that can get me the deep ball." That's a plus, dude. That's an absolute bonus. And then you put that into motion. So
yeah, sure. All right. What's up with the Phoenix Jackson thing yesterday? He committed, then he didn't. Our thoughts on that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time's the best place to buy tickets. Doesn't matter if it's for football, for basketball, for baseball. Hey, last second thoughts, going over to Holiday Hoopsgiving to watch Auburn play Ohio State in Atlanta. Game Time's got you covered, baby. That's the way to go.
You've got that. You've got NFL games, as it starts to come down the stretch. If you want to go check out an NFL game in Atlanta or Nashville from a proximity standpoint, once baseball gets started up again, you've got the opportunity. You could go to a concert. You could go to the theater. You could go to a comedy show. Dude, I love the flexibility of that, and I especially like the lightning deals. And guess what? I bought some tickets for somebody the other day for basketball, and it gave me the option, which is just very rare, to print them out. I printed them out.
Interesting.
And it was like, I was very excited about that. I was like,
because you're so old school, man.
I am old school.
Man, if y'all can print something out, you're all about it.
I'm like, I got to transfer these. They got to get the app. I printed them. I had them in my hand physically, and I was very excited.
Physical ticket. How about that?
I threw it back to 1990. I thought I was going to hear a Backstreet Boys song or something. I was pretty excited.
You print out the map quest on the way to the stadium, maybe?
I used to do that all the time, man. I had a folder with all of it in there.
Folder. I got a log. You're building your own GPS system. I love it. Hey, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Darrell, what time is it?
Game time?
Yes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. So Phoenix Jackson, the linebacker from Fresno State, we've done it multiple shows on how much we like his game. Really good in coverage. In fact, when the first report came out that he was committed to Auburn, they cited Pro Football Focus. He was the third best linebacker in coverage a year ago. You and I talked about that. I see him when Auburn goes to a one linebacker set or a dime set, and it's a passing situation. That's the kind of guy you want on the field. That's how they used Dorian Mayusi a year ago. He's obviously gone. I think Phoenix Jackson, there's a clear route to him playing that specific role. So what happened yesterday is he commits. He tells Auburn Live. Auburn Live quotes him. He's like, hey, we're ready to rock and roll. And then a few other places run with it because Auburn Live's typically on it. And then you saw a post from Auburn Rival saying, hold on, he could commit, but he is not currently committed yet. And then everybody kind of walked their stuff back and they explained it. But it sounds like Auburn wants him to visit first, which isn't crazy, but it sounds like he was ready to commit, according to the quote that he told Auburn Live. And Auburn was like, hold on. It's like, what does that mean?
It frustrates me because last year Auburn couldn't get kids to visit that committed elsewhere, and now they're getting kids to commit without visiting, and that's a problem. At some point you got to just look at film and trust the eyeball test, and as a coach, know you're looking at a football player and know who else wants this kid, and knowing that when there's a particular package that Hugh Freeze talks about that Auburn plays defensively, it's called the rabbit package, and that's the one that DeMarcus Riddick really flourishes in, where they just say, go get the quarterback. This would be an ideal package where you let Riddick and him play side by side. You let Riddick go get the quarterback. You let Phoenix Jackson cover the back out of the backfield or the tight end, and you eat. So, I mean, I don't get it. Cover linebackers don't grow on trees that can cover tight ends and backs out of the backfield, and this dude can.
Yeah.
And he's 6'2", 215. I get it. I don't know if they're thinking he's undersized for the SEC and they want to see him in person or whatever. But, I mean, he's rated high. He's rated high by all the portal services. So, and Auburn wants him. I mean, there's no doubt. Maybe they're doing due diligence. I get it. But
I guess so.
I don't know. I was excited when I saw it. A little frustrating.
I was too. It's like this guy seems like a need, a fit. I don't understand why you would hold off on it, but whatever. He was one of my top 5 yesterday. I was excited. I was like, and it seems like he's still expected to land here, but
just make it official, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time, like, perception's reality. Like, what's going to happen on the visit for Auburn to say no?
The only thing that I could think of is that, and I'm not saying this is the case, but sometimes on recruiting trips and visits, and this happened with Coleman, the guy that ended up going to Florida State, the Michigan State, Keon Coleman, something happened and transpired when they got face-to-face or through a Zoom call that could turn the coach. If you come out on a visit and it's just not a good fit from a culture standpoint or personality-wise or what you see and attitude, I'm not saying this at all. I'm saying maybe they want to say, hey, let's just make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's and the kid doesn't come out here and act like a jerk and then we're stuck. So
I guess
I don't know. But I don't.
I guess
I think you'd have an opportunity to kind of vet that before. And I love the kid. And again,
yeah. So we'll see. We'll see when he visits.
His film speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think so too. So we'll keep you updated, of course, on that. Darrell Dapprich, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, Dap6410. You can follow me on Instagram, Darrell Dapp. I'm on the Barn. I'm in the Barn, thebarnauburn.com. With you Wednesdays and Fridays, sometimes Thursdays. And then Saturday, after the Ohio State basketball game, we'll be going live, hopefully talking about a big win. Yep.
Yeah, I hope so. Speaking of the Barn, auburn.com, today is the last day to do the whole first month for $1 thing. And there is a Portal mega thread in there that's like 70 plus pages deep already. So go ahead and go to thebarnauburn.com, and sign up. It's the last day to do that first month for $1 deal. You won't regret that. Please like the video. Please subscribe to Locked on Auburn. As we record this, we are 6 subscribers away from 20,000. Got emotional about it earlier when I was thinking about it. So thank you so much. Until next time, this has been Locked on Auburn.